Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Channel 17, ready? Okay, welcome to the Essex Junction Trustee Meeting. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming on this snowy night, everybody. So, Pat, do we have any agenda additions?
We do not.
Okay. So I will, and do we have, I think we don't have anyone in the audience who has a question or a comment, so we'll skip over that part. Before I bring Charlie up, I just want to say we are going to be meeting with the Selectboard at 7, so I'm going to try to move things along, but I think on the other hand, we want to absolutely give the RPC their due. So Charlie, no, you don't want that to happen. Come on up and join us, and we're anxious to hear about this. Thank you. Thank you for coming too.
Oh,
Appreciate
no,
it.
thank you for having me. Thanks for making the time, I think.
Yep.
Whatever our due is.
Well,
So I think, or I'm hoping that you got our annual report in your packet.
yes.
Good. And so I'm really this is my kind of annual customer service check-in with you. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you that you could read yourself. But just for those, for someone watching at home, it's a 4 or 5 page report. The first page kind of gives background about the RPC, our board. We work for the municipalities of the county, our funding. Every municipality pays some dues, which we leverage with state and federal funding. Thank you for sending your representative, Dan, who's an active participant, and we really appreciate it, and also all the people you have on our different advisory committees. We
Yep.
appreciate that. The next page details some specific things that we did in the village. I'm not going to review these, but happy to answer any questions you might have on any of them. Probably some of them eventually make it to your table here, but a lot of them probably are more technical and stay in staff offices and things.
Yep.
And so, those range from sidewalk and path study to emergency management work, stormwater planning, water quality work, GIS mapping, better roads grants. So happy to answer any questions on those. The third page has the handful of projects that you have in V-Trans's capital program. Including a stormwater project that you got a grant from recently, from V-Trans recently. Crescent Connector, which I'm hoping goes under construction.
Yes.
Next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are too?
Yes. It'll be good.
And paving project, I think got done, right?
Yep. Oh, it's
You got a lot of paving done.
we got a lot of paving done, and I don't want to interrupt you, but it was awesome, and it's fantastic, and we're looking at the streetlights right here.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Just you just have to survive the process, right?
Yep.
And then the last couple pages list out a bunch of things that we do just region-wide without regard to municipality. We had our legislative breakfast this morning. We updated demographics, worked on dispatch, support transportation demand management, biking, walking, organizations that do those things like locomotion. We're working on our energy plan, the Building Homes Together campaign, clean water work. So anyway, like I said, I'm not going to read all those, but just touch on it and ask for any feedback that you have, good or bad, about how we have served you, how we can serve you better, how Dan can keep me in line.
Doing great, Charlie.
I was trying to wait till you had something.
Charlie, I first of all, I'm going to say thank you on behalf from all of us. I think you're doing a great job, and we appreciate everything that you do for Essex Junction, first of all. I have one question that's really not so much on here, but I'm curious about the Susie Wilson intersection. Is that, where are we with that? Is that something that's on the, I know it's in the, it's got improvements that are in plan, but when are those gonna happen, and how big a priority are they?
Okay, might be two layers of questions in there. I do believe it's a priority. I think I've had some recent conversation with V-Trans about, really taking a hard look at what can happen there soon. So that's, scoping it and figuring out what should be done. That's one layer.
Right.
The second, I think that is either has started or going to start soon. The next question about when will something be built,
Yeah,
that's a harder question.
yeah, I understand.
So,
Yeah.
I can't give you an answer. I could give you an answer, but it might not be right.
Do you see that?
But I do think, that we did hear, about the safety concerns there, and it's definitely, there's crash issues there, and it's a highly congested
Yeah,
area. So I do think it's kind of ramping up the priority list. There wasn't a real project there, and some things looked at, but I think it's moving up, so it's going in the right direction.
okay.
And I think,
Yeah,
we'll try to let you know as we have more information.
there's a couple, I don't know specifically what you're referring to, George, when you say Susie Wilson, because Susie Wilson intersection, there's an intersection with Kellogg Road, and that's in the pipeline to be done, on Susie Wilson, right where 289.
No, I mean.
You're
Susie
talking
Wilson-
back to
I'm
the
talking about
15.
Susie Wilson
Okay.
here, the
Yeah,
intersection
yeah,
with
yeah, okay.
15
All
and
right,
Susie Wilson.
I'm just curious,
Yeah.
just wanted to
Yeah, and I think
clarify that, because
it may turn into a bigger project if, they're kind of doing the whole stretch of Susie Wilson with, multiple intersections. So I don't have a good sense yet of what that's gonna turn into.
Okay, okay, okay.
So
Just wanted to put that out there.
And make sure it's on our minds.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah, any other questions, guys?
Sure, I have a question or two. Can you give just a super brief update of the dispatch study? What's going on with that?
Yep, so I think I was here the springtime when that was kind of starting up.
Right,
And there was the 7 or 8 municipalities appointed representatives to a joint survey committee, which is the process for a union municipal district. As I recall, I think you guys are familiar with that process.
Yes, we are.
very familiar.
We had some conversation about timing. And so, town appointed Pat, and like I said, we do meet tomorrow, and I think that group, and a lot of credit really to Aaron Frank, who's a deputy manager in Colchester. I think really without the amount of effort that he put into it, we wouldn't be where we are now. Not that everybody didn't contribute, but his effort was outsized. But so there's the draft municipal agreement and a funding MOU that is now being is in front of or being sent to the various select boards and city councils for them to act on it, to decide if they're gonna put it on ballot for town meeting day.
For this
So-
upcoming town meeting.
Yep, for March, yep. So that's where we are in the process right now. And, I think one of the things is that committee, and Pat can jump in anytime, but has kind of looked at the issues. And I think past efforts at looking at dispatch, it's not the first time we've looked at regionalizing dispatch. It's been looked at a couple times even in the last 15 to 20 years, and the first study was in 1967 or 1968. So this is not a new issue, but I think we tried to take a more kind of stepwise approach and be thoughtful. And so this first step is about setting up the governance structure, and then having an entity that can really work on the operational aspects. I think previous efforts have sometimes tried to figure out the operational details without figuring out the governance structure first, and kind of got bogged down in those things. And so I think people around the table are pretty hopeful that this may be an approach that does work, but it is stepwise. So there's going to be some frustrations, I think, articulated. And I wouldn't be surprised, particularly even from dispatchers, because we don't know how it will be really operationalized yet. Those things are going to need to happen after town meeting vote. If towns decide to create the entity, then we can start working on the next step. So I'm sorry, maybe that was,
No, that was
that's
great,
good.
thank you.
Pat, was that pretty close?
Perfect. And tomorrow's meeting is gonna be to put the fine tuning on the documents that Charlie mentioned, the agreement, the funding mechanism and then a resolution that each municipality would put forth for the town meeting, should they vote to do so. And it is possible to vote for the governance structure and not join right
Yeah.
away. I mean, there is,
Yeah, so you can kind of be on the governance board, but not really commit any money or staff. So, and that's what I mean by stepwise, so there's kind of creating the organization, but it doesn't necessarily commit the town to spending money yet.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question on I think it's on the second page, but the Essex Junction activities, the real-time traffic information.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if that has been implemented or if there's a timeline. I'd love to see what that data shows.
Haven't seen data from it yet. I think it mostly did get put in the field, so
Okay.
the monitoring
Is
devices got put out there, I think, in the last few months. So that's a good question. I haven't seen data yet. You know, really, we're trying to, help V-Trans. There was a competitive federal grant that we were able to apply for to do that. And hopefully it gets data to V-Trans better so they can monitor what's happening
Mhm.
and use that to either, you know, update traffic signals or get information out to travelers, like,
Yeah.
oh, you might wanna take a different route, there was a crash or heavy congestion. So haven't seen the results of it yet,
Oh,
but I think the equipment just got out there.
okay, thanks.
And I think there's a year built into this grant to monitor it, see how it's working,
When it's needed.
yeah, and make it work as well as we can.
Along those lines, is part of that plan for the data to be disseminated to the police department? Especially if speed is gonna be part of it?
I do not have a good sense of how V-Trans shares data with the individual police departments. So let me follow up on that.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Charlie? Charlie, you have any questions for us? You good?
I was gonna ask, how's it going, but,
See if you're going okay.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you're getting a new manager, so congratulations on making that.
We think we are.
Progress, yeah.
Yep.
Keep working at it, so.
Yes,
Um,
yes, we will. We
So
will.
no questions for me now, thank you.
Well, once again, thank you so much for coming, and
No, pleasure.
we do appreciate all the things that you folks do, and coming to our meetings and so forth. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Take care.
Thanks, Charlie.
Okay, so we will move on to new business, and Pat, we have a bid award for the Greenwood Avenue Drainage Project.
yes, we do. And the bid award, as you know, is for the drainage project. We went out to bid. We had bids ranging from $48,505 to $91,895. After the analysis that was done, the recommendation is going to the apparent low bidder, Don Weston Excavating, in an amount of $48,505. However, if you notice the cost, part of the paragraph, it says we have in the capital reserve for this project $41,026.
Right.
So there's a little bit of shortfall, and more importantly, as I was told very recently by Lauren, who can jump in at any time, there's some engineering that we have to account for on top of the 48,000, that's our cost.
Oh,
So that's another 6,000, so basically, we're gonna be in the neighborhood of $14,129 that we have to take from another source. And Lauren, can you
And we
help us out?
have, we have funds in the capital
In
fund
the-
to cover that. In the
Okay.
capital fund, we
Capital
have
fund.
funds to cover it.
Do we need, as part of the vote, that allocation as well, or are we good with the recommendation and the knowledge that we're gonna be taking money from the capital budget for this project? Let's be on the safe side and ask for it.
So the new amount for the Greenwood Ave project is gonna be $55,155. That's for construction and engineering. So if
Okay.
you wanna vote to put that in the FY18, to change that amount in the FY18 capital plan, that would be good.
okay.
So if you're so inclined, it would be recommended that the trustees award a bid for the Greenwood Avenue Design Improvements Project to Don Weston Excavating for $48,505.
Gotcha.
And the balance between that and the $14,129 will come from the capital project fund.
Okay. I'll try to Anyone, first of all, any questions about this? Everyone good on it? So let me try to give it a shot at a motion. I will move that the trustees award the bid for the Greenwood Avenue Drainage Improvement Project to Don Wesson Excavating Incorporated for $48,505, with additional funds to complete the project transferred from the capital improvement fund. And, okay, is that good?
That works.
That works? Okay, that's my motion.
Second.
Okay, any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and did you want me to make an initial motion to transfer?
No, there's
No,
not transfer,
you
the
just-
money's in there.
That's good, okay.
You just did it.
Okay, thank you. And so we now are on to Memorial, sorry, Pat, do you want to?
Yes, you can call me Shannon. for this
I'm going to
topic.
call you Shannon for
That's
a
fine,
little
right?
while.
You know, the issue here is whether or not the trustees wish to assign a new name to the small street that is the Five Corners Memorial, which connects Main Street, Route 15, with Lincoln Street, Route 2A, to comply with the state E911 rules and regulations and street naming. Although this is a cut-through street
Okay.
at the memorial at Five Corners, it has no addressing. It is still beneficial to our emergency services to have it identified by name. So Lieutenant Kissinger, who has been the go-to person working with Shannon, who's our E911 coordinator on street naming, said that it could be aptly named Memorial Way, given its ease in identifying exactly where it would be. So with that, there's a recommendation that the trustees approve Memorial Way as the new name for the location to comply with the state E911 board requirements, as well as improving the efficiency of our emergency services.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
And a second, any further questions about this? All in favor?
Aye.
Great,
Thank you all.
Memorial Way. Okay, so we are on to the reading file, board member comments. Any board member comments? Lori, why don't I just give a brief update of the meeting you and I had about Amtrak? So we met, one of the reasons I thanked Charlie was because we had someone from the, Christine Ford come, and we had a number of other people come to just talk about how can we possibly get funding. I won't review the whole meeting, but I think that we came away with the idea that we probably want to approach this in a piecemeal way and get funding for the street improvements from one source, building improvements from another source. This is for the Amtrak CCTA station on Railroad Avenue. And Michelle Boomhauer recommended that we might want to work with the RPC because they can help guide us through the grant process, the grant writing process. It can be cumbersome, complex. So I just wanted to say that something we can talk about at a future meeting, but I think that's a good idea. We should probably figure out who would do that and have someone work with RPC to begin the process of writing grants and applying for federal funds to. It can't, maybe some other big thing will happen in the meantime and we'll find some other source, but if we do this now, at least we'll be working on it and who knows, something might come through. Lori, did I?
Yeah, that was great. I would just say the other thought she gave us, which I had never thought of, was reaching out to nonprofit entities who would potentially be willing to give grant money towards the street piece of it, which would be for more safety and pedestrian. So as George said, piecemeal, but both public and private money potentially. So I think having someone work with RPC would be really helpful.
We'll try to wrap it up and put something coherent into a future agenda so we can talk about it and organize it a little bit better. Anyone else? Trustee comments? Good?
Thanks for going to that meeting and for being so diligent about
It
bringing
was,
everyone
it
to
was
the
good.
table.
It was good.
Yeah, it was a good
Greg
one.
was there. It was good. Okay, so, and we're all good with minutes from other meetings and the letter from William Moran, Executive and Budget Day. Do we need to just go over Budget Day real quick? Pat, did we
No,
discuss this?
I think the schedule is pretty self-explanatory. We're gonna start at what, 8:30, 8:15,
Yeah.
8:30? And we'll be marching through the budget, break for lunch, and continue on until we're done.
Okay.
Generally, we get into other discussions as a function of budgets, and so the department heads will certainly be able to provide you with any and all information you might need. So I'm confident we're ready, aren't we?
Almost.
See, almost.
Okay,
Okay,
that's good, that's good enough, just go
Close,
for
we're
it.
close.
Yeah, we're close, we'll get there. Okay, so in any last minute details in terms of lunch and organization, I'll just have Patty contact people for
as you go
preferences and
through
so
person.
forth. Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Blah, blah, let me see, so we're on to the consent agenda. And do I hear a motion?
Move we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? No, good. All right, so we're done with that part of the meeting, and so why don't we take a short break and recess while we reorganize, and so we can welcome the Essex Select Board here. Thank you.
Good job, good job.
And look at 5 minutes to spare.
Well, yeah, I would say thank you, Charlie.
Yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, is it this one the bed?
Is it like 95 degrees in here?
It's not that warm, but it's comfortable.
It's comfortable. Yeah,
Hi, Max.
it's not freezing for a change.
Welcome to the other sandbox.
Hello.
Really, thank you very much, it's kind of fun. Put that on my keychain.
Yeah, we're good at Bruce Power.
So are you, Channel 17 ready? You good? Okay, so the trustees will just come back into session, but you guys need to.
Yeah, so I'll call the December 12th, 2017 Select Board meeting to order. Okay, I think that does it.
Do you need to do other stuff? You know,
Uh,
ordinance and all that stuff, or you good?
Yeah, I think we're good. We can just move on to the
Okay.
next item, which is agenda additions and changes.
Yep.
So,
Um,
you put something there.
I did. I have, I put there's a list of questions and comments that are derived from a conversation I had with the village attorney this morning. He wanted clarification on some things, and so this would be added on to item C. Actually, I think it would be item D. It'd be item D, so that's where this would go. So, can I will, can I hear a motion on the trustees?
There's one more thing, I think.
Did you not get one, Dan?
He's an extra one. There's
Yeah,
one
we've got
there's an
several
extra one
extras
right there.
Sorry,
There's
Pat.
an extra one somewhere.
Yeah.
No, don't worry.
I've got two. I've got two more, I've got more up here.
Okay, and what I'd like to also add, there's this item 5E to the agenda, if we could. It's about future dates for joint select board trustees meetings. So I think this is the last one that we had identified as a date, right?
Right.
Right.
So if, I would propose that we have a discussion 5E on future dates for
Okay.
joint meetings.
I'll move we approve the agenda additions for the
Second.
trustees.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, need a motion for the select board to approve the changes to the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Michael.
Second.
Thank you, Sue. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Great.
Okay. So why don't we swing it back over to Pat? Public to be heard, I think, is there anyone from any members of the public have a question or comment? It's not on about something that's not on the agenda tonight. Okay, good. So we'll move it over to Pat, and we have an approval of an employee resolution. Pat?
Yes, as you know, most of you should know by now that we have received and accepted with regret the retirement of our police chief, Bradley LaRose. His retirement date is effective January the 12th of this upcoming year, 2018. And so in keeping with our recognition in past practices, we have, there's a proposed resolution recognizing him for his dedicated service in many years in the Essex Police Department. He's been here 37 years. And so that is submitted to you actually submitted to both boards for your consideration and hopeful adoption.
What I'd like to do is ask Sue, as clerk of the select board, to read the resolution in appreciation of Bradley LaRose to the record for us.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, resolution in appreciation of Bradley LaRose. Whereas Bradley LaRose was hired as a police officer for the town of Essex on December 15, 1980. And whereas Brad will be retiring on January 12, 2018. And whereas Brad has concluded more than 37 years of dedicated service to the Essex community. And whereas Brad has served the Essex Police Department and the Vermont law enforcement community exceptionally well for decades as an officer, supervisor, and chief of police. And whereas Brad supervised and mentored many subordinates fairly and as a first-line supervisor, commander, and chief of police. And whereas Brad has been a lead instructor for the Vermont Police Academy, certified as an expert in the field of motor vehicle accident investigations, where he has trained hundreds of Vermont police officers. And whereas Brad has been the supervisor and/or lead investigator in several major criminal investigations, several homicides, during his tenure at the Essex Police that greatly impacted the safety and welfare of the communities of Essex and citizens of Vermont, now therefore be it resolved that the Select Board, Board of Trustees, and Municipal Manager, on behalf of the citizens of the town of Essex, hereby extend our gratitude to Brad for his many years of service to the people of Essex.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's a pretty impressive, it was a long career of distinguished service from Brad. And it was announced at the select board meeting that we had last week, and the whole place gave him a standing ovation. So it was nice, he was present for that, so that was, it's gonna be sorely missed, but we have a good replacement for him,
We do.
and that's Rick Gary, Captain Rick Gary, and that takes place,
Immediately, 000 hours on the 13th, so we will not be without a chief even for a second.
okay.
Okay. Do I hear a motion on the part of the trustees?
I move we approve the resolution of appreciation of Chief of Essex Police Bradley LaRose.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you.
Entertain a motion from the select board?
I move,
Right?
I move that we adopt the resolution of appreciation for Bradley LaRose.
Thank you, Mike. Do I have a second on that? Thank you, Irene. Any further discussion of approving the resolution of appreciation of Bradley LaRose? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Especially Brad, for his many years of dedicated service.
Okay, I will move us to the next item on the agenda, which is governance. Where I won't, I can go back over the notes, but why don't I just cut to the chase? I think at our last meeting, we were talking about governance and talking about the approach that we would take to governance, and having a meeting where we begin the process of discussing how we're going to do this and where we're going to go with it and so forth. And we had kind of tentatively said that we would try to schedule it in March between the Essex Town Meeting and Essex Junction Annual Meeting. That we would want to have several people recommended, different experts, some from academia, some from VLCT, some from the Secretary of State's office. It wasn't really clear who we would invite, so these are just recommendations. And then we'd also said that maybe we should consider holding it off-site on a Saturday at a place that may be a little bit more comfortable than one of our meeting rooms. We could have food available, and members of the public would be available, but it'd be a more casual setting. So that's kind of where we left it. I think what would be good is that I'd recommend, if I can, just to sort of focus us a little bit, if we could narrow down the date, really try to bear down and say what day would we like to have this on, place. Again, maybe we don't have to say specifically exactly, but do we want to follow through on the idea of having it off-site at some kind of a meeting space, or do we want to have it at 81 Main Street or here? And then I'd just like to get a sense of maybe narrowing it down to, do we definitely want to have a facilitator there? And how many government experts do we need to kick this off? I would greatly, with great respect, recommend that we probably don't want to have lots of them. We probably want to narrow it down to one or two. It doesn't mean that other questions that they can't answer won't be answered eventually, but to kind of streamline things a little bit and narrow focus it, what are some of the thoughts? So I would leave it at that, and yeah, go ahead, Elaine.
I'm sorry, you weren't
No,
finished.
I'm done. That's pretty much where I am, so go ahead.
I agree that we would, I think we should have a facilitator. I'm wondering if, right now, discussing the quantity of experts and what they might talk about is a little premature. And so perhaps at a subsequent joint meeting between our boards in January or February, we have a meeting talking about this event. And at that meeting, we talk about what our agenda would be, what kind of information we want to discuss, and at that time, we think about who we could have come speak.
Okay.
So I'm suggesting a pre-meeting, sorry.
Okay. Okay.
An agenda item for a joint meeting that's more specific.
Okay.
I think we talk about having that on a Saturday then?
Well, I think the initial concept was that we would have, at the time we had an expert or two come in, it would be on a Saturday so that folks could come and listen. That's all.
Other thoughts? Irene?
I'd like to suggest that we convene a group of 5 people from outside the village only to help the select board make decisions on behalf of that particular constituency, because, as you know, the select board is in this sort of awkward position of serving 2 masters. We serve constituents inside the village and outside the village, and for us to be talking about governance on behalf of people who we don't wholly represent in the way that the trustees wholly represent village residents, I think would only be fair.
But we're elected to represent the entire
That's right, but
population. And if we choose 5 that aren't elected, that's really not fair to the constituents, right? I mean, they elected us to do that representation for them.
Well,
I think we ought to find a way to collect that information, but I don't think that they should have an equal seat as an elected board.
they wouldn't have an equal seat as an elected board. The decisions would still be up to us because we are elected to make decisions, but they would be convened to help us see the world from a purely outside the village perspective, which we, because we're elected by 22,000 people, absolutely cannot. And using your logic, Max, the fact that we represent everyone tells me that we could basically not invite the trustees and say, look, we represent everybody. That's not my point. My point isn't to say who we represent, who we don't represent. I want to have an equal playing field because we very often, when we have these inside and outside the village conversations, do not have an equal number of people on each team. And I think it would only be fair if we're going to have the village trustees in the room representing solely village interests, it would be representative equity to have 5 people from outside the village going along, learning as we learn, and contributing in the conversation just as we do in any of these
Erin, can I ask a quick
deliberations.
question?
Yeah.
Would you consider the Essex Governance Group process that we went through in the recent past with multiple members of the town outside the village participating and extensively, would that constitute participation? And we have a lot of input from folks in the town outside the village already.
That's about a specific issue. Last I knew, there were certain things that they wanted, which was to get rid of town meeting, make it into a hybrid. This is strictly about governance, governing boards, as I understand it, and I think that's a very different issue.
Andy?
I guess I'm confused by, I didn't think we were talking about appointing any committees. I thought that we were going to open the meeting to anybody who wanted to come. So of course, those 5 people, if you want to invite them, could certainly come and be there, but there may be 7 or 8 other people that aren't from outside the village. I don't think we want to limit the number of people that, from the village, that attend and keep score as to how many people attend all of the meetings. I guess I don't see us that our plan is to appoint people to come to these meetings. We're going to invite everybody to come.
But the people who are weighing in on the decisions, as usual, do not consist of equal numbers of people looking out for certain interests in an equal capacity. And we've seen that with the merger task force, we've seen that with the RGSC. There are just committee after committee after committee historically where we've seen an imbalance. And I'd like for once, if we're going to talk about governance, to reconcile that imbalance. And if that means the select board has to step back and hear more from people outside the village who normally don't weigh in because they aren't trying to wear 2 hats as everyone on my select board does, I think it's critical that those people get the voice that they have not historically had.
So how do you see that group of people interacting as we move forward with our meetings?
I'm open to suggestions. I just want to make sure that those voices don't get lost as they so often have in the past. And then we're surprised to get the input at the ballot box or whatever.
Mike?
I agree with Andy. I think the invitation should be to everyone. And I'm not in favor of limiting it to just a special chosen 5. to my way of thinking, that makes the score 10-5. I don't agree. I just think we make the invitation open to everybody.
As elected representatives, isn't it upon us to get the input from those who elected us? So, as town representatives, you should get the input from the entire town. As village representatives, we should get the input from the village residents. So, to me, that means we should represent the village's interests, and the select board should represent the entire town, village and town.
Oh, I think the floor is just open for discussion, you don't have to keep,
No,
but
this is
go
the
ahead.
rule, this is the rule that we
Yeah,
try to
sure,
abide
yes,
by.
yeah, yeah.
I'm curious, Mike, as to who those 10 people are that you're talking about. And I'm not saying we exclude anyone from attending the meeting. I'm just saying that 5 people who apply, as many people have been applying lately for citizen interview panels and all kinds of things, step up, and we as a select board, for example, could choose, or the new manager, if he or she is there at this time, could pick those 5 people to represent a constituency that never seems to get appropriate representation, because the select board is always tasked with having a foot in both places, which means sometimes our village constituents get our representation, sometimes outside the village constituents get it, but there's never a voice speaking solidly for outside the village, and that has caused innumerable problems in the past for those of us who've been here long enough.
Then let people that have a strong feeling about the governance issue, because I'm sure, I can name 3 of them right off the bat on the committee that Elaine and I served on and still are serving on. Tell them to gather people up and come to the meeting. I see no sense, and neither am I gonna step back and give up the decision-making role that we were elected to do. I just think that's foolish. I can think of 3 people that you could email, or you could phone, or have coffee with, and just say, we're looking to gather up and make sure that the town residents know that we're gonna be talking about this issue.
I kind of see
And
this
have them come to the meeting.
as a select board issue, and I agree with Andy that it's up to us to get the input that we need in order to make the decisions. So why don't we have the discussion of the select board decide how we want to gather that information. I'm not, maybe we could have special meetings of gathering input in preparation for this March meeting, but I hear what you're saying, you want to get input, and Andrew says, yeah, you're supposed to do that. So let's talk about a way that makes sense. So why don't we put that just on a future one, and we'll try to get those arranged before this meeting in March so that we do have that voice. It's just a...
Can I make one observation? Thank you. I don't mean to interrupt your internal board discussion, but it seems like I just want to get clear on what we're talking about. I don't even know what we're trying to gather community input for at this point. I think, my understanding of this, the purpose of this meeting, is for us to define how us as 2 boards want to approach this. And it seems like the opportunity and necessity for acquiring input from various constituencies would come after we've made that decision. I mean, we could now, once we start dividing down, I mean, I could say, well, I know how the people in Countryside feel, but I'm not sure about the folks in Indian Acres. I want to make sure they're at the table too. Once we start divvying up, then we may not even be able to begin to talk about it. So I think it's an interesting proposal, but I think probably for the trustees, I think we'll let the select board handle this, figure this out.
Yeah.
I agree, it's not quite time either. I mean,
Yeah.
this event or meeting we're talking about is a learning experience for all of us.
Right.
Like, what are the options and
How do they work on the systems?
how it works in other states, right.
Yeah, I mean, that was the point. I would actually say we're even a step back from where you were saying, George. I think we're at information gathering.
Right,
We're-
exactly.
We're trying to obtain information so that we can then, assess it and make some, decisions, or
Yes.
not even decisions, but recommendations.
I have a question about the timing of this meeting. I believe the village trustee votes for any vacant seats or whatever would be in April.
Yes.
Do we really
April
want to
4th.
have these meetings before any changing of the guard?
I would put that up to the trustees. I mean, I'm not up for reelection this year, so I don't know how the other trustees feel about it. You know, I think.
If I'm not at this table, I'll be out there. I mean, it doesn't
Right.
matter to me. I'll still come into the meeting.
As the other person who would be up, I'm good for it. I'm
Yeah.
fine to have discussion.
I mean, my comment on that would be that if the boards decide to sort of agree mutually on a process, as we, you know, we agreed on a joint, a manager, having a mutual manager, in the interim period where Pat's tenure was for 3 years, boards could, makeup of the boards could change, but the overall, the forward motion and the effort of the board is sort of locked in place. So I would guess that that's what we would do. You know, any new person would have to just join in.
Just wanted to check. Thanks.
And again, since it's fact finding, that's easy to get caught up on. I mean, you know, if it's new, if we, you know, if there's new people, they could reach out to any experts we bring in to get credit.
Good. So maybe we could just narrow it down and just say, can we pick out a day in March? Is that possible?
And specifically Saturday, I think is.
Well, I think, Saturday, good, everyone think? I think we said Saturday. Is that good for everybody?
I think
Is that
if we want public input, I think that would be the best.
If you want people, members of the public to be there, and so
The other thing I
Saturday.
would recommend is that after winter break? Yeah,
Yeah,
winter
yeah.
break ends. Right.
And at town meeting.
And
Right.
it's a town meeting, yeah.
I'm good, any day.
Any
I'd
Saturday.
pick a Saturday other than March 17th. Just saying, my heritage is getting away.
Good call, Dan.
Yeah, but we'll be meeting in the morning, Dan.
That might be, that might be a good reason.
meeting at
No,
6
if you'd like.
So you have the 10th, the 24th, and the 31st.
And the 3rd.
The 31st
Well, the 3rd is
is,
before
is,
town meeting.
Yeah.
31st is the day before Easter, so that may not.
Oh, is it? Oh.
So it
Let's do
sounds
the
like,
24th.
how about the 24th? Does that
24th.
work for everyone?
24th?
April 1st? Really?
How about the 24th?
Sounds good.
Yep, I can do that.
Anyone have any conflicts with the 24th? Okay. 24th going once, going twice, we got it. Okay?
Good.
And now the next question I have, place. Again, do we want to try to have it, we don't have to pick it out right now, we might want to see what's available, but do we want to have it in one of our meeting rooms? I have no idea how many people would attend. I mean, I think if we anticipate it's going to be a big crowd, this room might not be able to accommodate people. 81 Main Street, do we want to try to figure out in
Yeah.
advance, have it at a different place?
A
What
couple
would we
months
do?
ago, there was that really nice, the planning event that you did, Greg, at the Essex. And there was a pretty decent turnout there, and there was light food for folks to eat. And I think if we're gonna be there for quite some time, it'd be a good idea to have food and also to have a neutral ground.
Okay,
I don't think it should be in this building or that building.
okay. Thoughts? The Essex?
That sounds right. I can't think of any other space like that.
Or maybe, you know, it could be the community center at Holy Family, or, I mean,
Well, that's the nomination, I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah.
High school auditorium.
high school gym, you know, whatever,
So off-site,
off-site,
you pick it.
Yeah,
good food.
Good food.
Well, why don't we just sort of look, because if we say we're gonna do it at the Essex or at the high school, we may not be able to get in there. Those places may be taken. So
Right.
I guess if everyone's decided to be off-site at a place where we can serve food, that's good, and we can kind of shop it around and come to a specific decision. And if we did the Essex, if it's a place where we had to rent or have food brought in, we split the bill between the town and the village, good? Just assume that's okay? Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Would it be getting too deep into the weeds to talk about approximate length of this meeting? A start?
Not in the
start
slightest. I
time?
think that's a great question right there, Mike. Go ahead.
I mean, as much as I'd love to spend all day with all of you.
Yes.
That, I think, historically, for for human beings to maintain that level of intensity for that long a period of time.
I don't think an all-day meeting is a good
Probably
idea.
just not gonna make it, so.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts?
If we're gonna be looking for residents to get there, I would say probably no later than 10. And I would say,
4 o'clock, maybe?
Ooh, that's a long time.
What can I?
Two.
Yeah,
So,
two.
yeah.
Can I ask a question? Should we narrow down the scope of this meeting? So, there was a whole lot of talk we've had before, everyone gave what they wanted to hear about. I mean, maybe we pick one general, that's agreed, this is not gonna happen in one day, so there's gonna be a lot of meetings. So pick one topic to start our discussions. What is the most important thing for us to learn about first?
Well, are we just learning about something, or are we talking about, I think, as I recall our discussion, where we want to have some information there so we can ask questions about different governing structures and what's available, what's possible, and so forth. That's one thing. But I think what we also wanted to do is say, how are we going to approach this? What does the next meeting look like, and the meeting after that, and the meeting after that? Do we want to create a schedule? How fast do we want to go? Do we want to meet every month? So I think that'd be two
That's what I
pieces.
meant by
Pre-meeting.
the pre-meeting.
Yeah.
If we could have a facilitator join us at the pre-meeting to help narrow down the topics and the method and the timing, and then we all convene on that Saturday to
Right.
have that meeting.
Have
And
a-
I think that
With
would
the facilitator.
shorten the meeting.
have a pre-meeting before the meeting at which we,
Logistics.
Logistics, topics, research,
Agenda.
et cetera, agenda.
And if we have a facilitator for the whole process, a whole timeline step that they would recommend. So
Yes.
this is how I, as a
Yes.
facilitator, cover these topics in this order.
Right.
To get you to a point where,
Right.
you can.
so, but what you just said takes place at the meeting or the
At the
pre-meeting?
pre-meeting.
At the pre-meeting, okay.
Which has to happen soon, so that the facilitator has time
Right.
to do all that.
That would have to happen.
And we
in January.
publicize it, and people can save the date and all that.
Exactly.
So we're going to have a pre-meeting with the facilitator who's going to figure this out
Yes.
Great.
With us.
with us.
Yeah.
Okay.
In
And then-
January. Can
And
we get
then
on
March 24th is when we have our
And
first.
when we have it.
Yes.
So tonight, what we should decide is how are we going to identify a facilitator?
Right.
So, is that some research that some of us get tasked with, or do we task staff to find a facilitator?
In the notes, it said, somebody suggested Delia Clark, for example.
Now, Delia Clark is a chef who I'd love to have, because that would be
Really?
awesome. But Susan Clark was who we were talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
They both facilitate.
I think they both
Yeah.
came up, because Delia did the TGI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was good. What are you doing?
Wow. I
We know
didn't
where
remember
your
her name.
mind is.
Can I just ask a question? I'm not saying no, just curious. What if we had a facilitator who, they may not necessarily, what if we had a facilitator who had more familiarity with governance and governing issues? Would that be a better thing or not a good thing? Is there such a person out
I
there?
think there are pros and cons. Right, facilitator by nature doesn't need to be an expert.
I know.
And-
Right,
and
because they don't
often-
participate.
And oftentimes is better at keeping on task and moving
Yeah.
things along if they're not an expert.
Okay.
But
And then
But then-
our speakers could be the subject matter experts that help us.
Right, that's kind of how I was seeing this.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't know who's going to be available right now. We can't say, so how do we decide? We shop or we figure out a couple of names, maybe do some kind of an online poll or something, I don't know.
Well, how about, I think there are several of us around the table who are familiar with multiple facilitators. We
Okay.
could make some suggestions and then vet the list and ask them if they're available.
Well, the way the select board is choosing a facilitator for the firearms discharge discussions is we tasked Pat and delegated to Greg to go out and do an RFP or something, RFQ, and perhaps we could do the same thing, but for this topic.
Sure.
Are you talking about having this pre-meeting in January?
Yes.
You're
that's-
short, you're
You're
too
really
short
Very
of
short
time.
period.
That's extraordinarily busy month.
Yes, I
Number
know.
one, in a short time, but since Greg has already started the recruitment and the selection for the facilitator, maybe there's a couple of people in there that, if Greg shared all the facilitators that he uncovers in this effort, perhaps you may find, you get a 2-for-1 with this search for a request for qualifications. But I'm gonna put Greg on the spot and see if he's amenable to that on the timetable that you sort of thinking about, so.
Well, does the pre-meeting, maybe the pre-meeting could happen in February.
It depends on when we schedule our next joint meetings, right? I mean, ideally, we want to have it, we don't want to convene us all in extra time, but perhaps we could make it as a special agenda item on one of our joint meetings.
You could
Yeah,
piggyback off
if I'm on the spot, we can, I can circulate some names that I have on the list of facilitators. I can see what comes back with the firearms feedback and add those names to the list if there's anyone new. Or we can just kind of go out to bid and reach out to some facilitators in the area and just see what comes back, what's a good price, and if you trust staff to pursue and hire somebody for you. So I guess the question back at you is, do you want staff to just hire somebody, or do you want to have a say in choosing that person?
What if we define the boundary conditions, say that they don't need to have experience in, governance, but it's in facilitating, for example? I mean, that might
They have to have
narrow it
some
down.
understanding of
Yeah.
the
Pardon?
concepts.
Yeah. Can we reach out to VLCT? Maybe they know someone,
Or UVM,
or
A
UVM.
UVM extension, yeah.
Yeah.
yes, we can.
Okay, so let me clarify. So what you're reaching out to these, to VLCT and/or UVM, and to identify a facilitator and maybe a couple, and you're gonna have names, and those names, you're gonna do what with those names? You're gonna just say, this is the person we've chosen, and you're gonna inform us of that, or are we gonna have to choose? Do we need a pre-meeting to choose who the facilitator is
I
gonna
would
be?
say yes.
Yes.
I would say absolutely yes.
Yeah, I think I'd want to see.
What's absolutely yes? Yes, absolutely yes what?
You
To
have
have
to
the board
choose the
sway it to
facilitator.
choose it.
Okay, how are we gonna do that? Via email, via an online poll? How do we do that?
We can
Meeting in
make,
January.
we can make it
Oh,
part of
come
the.
on, we just can't keep having
How,
pre.
our
Well-
first meeting, or each of our first meetings,
Yeah, you could,
right?
I believe, as I remember last year, in the meeting spin that I was in, that we have a couple of meetings that are back-to-back in January. The regularly scheduled trustees meeting, like the second Tuesday of January. It's usually preceded by a meeting with the Selectboard on budgets, that we also carry forward the ability to have business items, should they come up. It could be one business item where you have a report from Greg on the results of this process, and the select board would make a recommendation, subject to
Approval by the trustees?
approval by the trustees. The trustees would get the same information, and they would look at it, and the only time it would be a problem, if there needs to be a meeting to come up with the acceptable one, if both parties choose a different person.
Yeah.
But I think with the staff recommendation being, here's the work we've done, have a discussion and make a decision on a certain date, we just step back from it, and I think it's very important that you like the facilitator you're gonna be working with a little bit, in terms of their skills and abilities.
Can I make a suggestion? Can we suspend this conversation temporarily and change the agenda to talk about the meeting schedule? And then,
Yeah, well, I think if we narrow this down, then we can just get it figured out when we get there. If we just understand what we're gonna do, and then when our meeting schedule will be in January and February. Good?
Good.
Okay. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I think we can probably.
So the staff's gonna make a recommendation.
Make recommendations.
Uh,
That we will then, they will come to us at our separate board meetings in January, and then see if the select board and the trustees can't just independently of a joint meeting arrive at the same decision. Is that kind of what you're saying?
And really, yes, not so much specific recommendations on whom to choose, but who has the skill set that you're looking for based upon what work has been done, and the recommendation that you do make a decision, but That's as
Got it.
far as,
Take
Sure.
a chance and get that, and assume that the facilitator probably isn't gonna bring a whole lot of pro-village, anti-town bias with them into the
Right.
or vice versa.
Right.
That it's just gonna be a facilitator.
Exactly.
Okay. Does that sound good? Irene?
I want to go back to who pays. We're all town residents. I'm not sure why the town budget isn't picking up the whole bill for all of this.
would you
Well,
like that to happen? We could do.
I personally would. I don't think it's fair for the village residents to pay twice for this. I think
But
if
I don't
the
have a
town
problem
picks
with
it
that.
up, everybody's paying equally.
I think you're in the right
Everything
move for
else.
that position.
I'm amenable to that.
Yeah, we're on board with that.
Sure.
We're on board with that.
Okay, well, I thought everybody agreed to something different, so I
No,
just wanted to
I-
raise the
we're
issue.
on
It just
board with
doesn't
that.
constitute ownership of the process. Just want to make sure that's clear.
That's never happened that I've seen.
I just want to make that clear.
I don't see any problem with towns picking it. It's not gonna be a big bill either.
Well, right, exactly.
I mean, is that right? Is there a line?
I'm not gonna make any predictions on
Okay.
what the bill's gonna be.
Yeah.
Okay.
The work will determine it.
Okay, folks, did we nail this down? That was so much.
Nail and jello.
Yeah. Andy?
Sorry, I have a couple of other questions
Yes,
on
please.
this topic. The material that we were given, I don't know if the trustees got the same material, but there is a list from the October 30, is it October 30 meeting? 24th, sorry, October 24th meeting, but there was a similar list in the November 8th meeting. I wasn't at the October 24 one, so my input isn't in the content that was handed out, that was included in this agenda packet, at least the
Okay.
one that came to the trustee, the select board. I just don't want to make sure that we don't lose
What's been said so
the
far?
additional items that were further down in the November 8th minutes
Okay.
that weren't actually included here.
Okay. I'm
Um,
not sure.
There's the awkward situation that the select board hasn't approved those minutes
Oh.
too, but, so I don't know if, I wasn't sure if that was why they weren't included here or where we have, yeah.
Don't know what to say about that.
Once they're approved?
Great.
It must have been my oversight, so it was further down in the minutes, which you would. I
It
just
was further down on the minutes, there was a bulleted list without the names.
Yeah, we have that in our
It's here.
packet.
No, it's not in there. There is a bulleted list there, but it's about a different topic. It starts with memo from George Tyler dated 10/30, right?
Yeah, that was the topic
That's
about.
not the, that's the discussion about, oh, you know what?
It's on page 3.
Yeah.
Is it there, Katie?
My apologies, my apologies, my apologies.
It's all good.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I ask my other question?
Yes, of course.
The social studies teacher at ADL sent us all an email asking us to participate in a survey on this topic. Do anybody have any concerns or objections to us answering those questions and potentially having content out there that could color future discussions?
I already responded.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I did. I mean,
Hey, I'm looking forward to seeing what the eighth graders
Yeah,
have to say about the
exactly.
topic, to be honest.
Yeah, but the thing is though, is that they were able to identify which comments came from which board, and they could state a position of one of the two boards present in this room on a topic that we have not yet fully discussed. And so that's the thing that I just asking whether or not it's a concern or an issue or
From our perspective, the cat's already out of the bag.
Yeah,
I mean, we've
sorry.
answered it. I mean, it's anonymous, but you do identify what board
Right.
you're on.
Yeah.
Right,
so.
right. But we have all these things about being biased and make sure that we're communicating right. And we got communication policies with punitive measures in them and things like that I don't want to inadvertently.
violate that. Pat Heather.
I think the panel, if you're talking about sitting on the panel and evaluating and discussing the recommendations that are made by eighth graders to the panel, I think your focus of the topic is what you thought about their recommendations, not necessarily you putting yourself in their position.
Yeah.
And, you know, you could always.
Yeah, no.
No, that's not at all what the questions are.
We filled out a they asked us like 8 or 9 questions about governance and what we
Oh.
think,
Yeah.
and we just
Yeah,
answered them.
What,
you know?
what is our
There's 4
opinion about what
questions.
the future governance should look like if there's if it combines? And
Well,
it just,
the normative word there is
It was
should.
4 questions, and they gave an A and B option,
Yeah,
each
I was gonna
one.
say, it wasn't too.
Yeah.
Each one has a, do you prefer this or this, and then why,
Yeah.
basically.
And you can say, based upon the knowledge that you have right
Yeah.
before you write this very minute, this is your recommendation, but it could be subject to change based upon different
yeah,
information.
yeah.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this thing in March to be enlightened. I'm gonna learn things that I never knew, so.
And you can invite them to sit in at one of those meetings.
Maybe that's all, maybe somebody needs to just reach out and provide that caveat to the instructor that we haven't yet had a discussion, we're still learning, and this is our points of view based on what we know at this point
Well,
in time.
according to our communications policy, we need to make it very clear that it is our own opinion and not that of the board.
That's all you gotta say.
So,
I'm working with that instructor, so I'd be happy to send a disclaimer of that kind if you want to send me language or
Yeah,
trust me to say it properly. I mean, that's up to you.
and I'll be there Friday too, so.
Well, if you tell her that that's just our individual opinion, it's not the representation of the board.
Mhm.
So you're free to recommend a benevolent dictator at any time and not be held accountable for that.
Good question, I honestly didn't
Yeah.
think of it. I was just excited they were doing it.
Yeah.
so today's the deadline that they've asked for, so if everybody, if those who,
Do you sign
I
up?
haven't done it yet because I wanted to have this conversation tonight, but.
So, Elaine, you work with Amanda?
I mean, well, not as a job. This will be the 3rd year that I've done a governance project with the students.
Okay.
So she went away for a while and came back, and so it's been a couple years, but
Okay, great.
Lori works with her too. She's been in her classroom. Dan and I, 2 or 3 years ago, we did a group
School.
Hiawatha ADL civics project together where we created our ideal village, and Amanda is an
She's
outstanding
wonderful, yeah.
educator, and we are
Sounds like it.
really lucky to have
Yeah.
her. And she has very high
So are
standards
her
for her
eighth graders.
students,
Mhm.
so,
Okay, so you can carry that message forward to her?
absolutely.
Yeah, I guess the only other piece is that, you know, we're acquiring information, so we don't know what we don't know yet.
Right, right.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have one little, I gotta just creep back very quickly and say, in terms of the timing of the D meeting that we're planning on the 24th off-site, and we said we should, are we thinking we're gonna start at 10 in the morning? I think it's just, if we're gonna try to reserve a place, we probably wanna work on that now.
Can we do like 10 to 2?
10 to 2? I think beyond 2 would probably be a long,
Yeah.
long,
On a Saturday.
a painful day. Okay. Okay, that's all I had.
That's exactly what I did.
Are we good for that? And we'll, I really do think we're getting closer to figuring it out.
We are, I think we're making some progress.
Okay, so let's move on to the manager recruitment conclusion. And I'm going to say that items C and D kind of, there's a lot of overlap between the two. So it's unavoidable. I don't think there's a clear line between them. I wanted to, before I get into this, Max and I get into this, I met with Dave Barra this morning, and his recommendation, among other things, he had some questions, and we're going to get to that in a minute, but he said he would strongly urge us not to disclose the new manager's name, any personal information, even gender, until we have the contract completely wrapped up. He just said he would strongly advise we follow that rule. And so we had planned on disclosing it tonight, but I think that that's something I would recommend that we do that if everyone's okay with that. And I would also recommend that in the discussion we're about to have, if anyone feels that we can't address some of these questions that I'm going to talk about, at any point in the discussion, you can't answer or we can't respond, without getting into the specifics of the new manager, then we can continue the discussion in executive session. This is a personnel issue and it's a contract issue, so it pushes two big buttons that allow us to go into executive session if necessary. I know it wasn't warned, but, you know, every step we take on hiring a new manager jointly by two boards is completely new ground for both of us. So I think it would be okay if necessary, but hopefully we won't need to do that. But if anyone at any time feels you want to go into executive session to get the discussion going, then to continue the discussion, then let me know and we can take it from there. Okay?
Yeah, it's really not a discussion per se about the contract
Right.
itself, but how the trustees and select board will work together because of the contract. And I did check with the town attorney, and he was fine with us having that discussion open if it's about how we're gonna be, you know, working together, and it's not about the details really of the contract. The contract is there, it's not signed yet, there's some things that we're waiting for, but it's really about how we're gonna work together to make decisions.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. So in terms of the recruitment conclusion, so we basically concluded working with MRI. Max and I, as we were allowed to do by the motion of the two boards, we worked with MRI to hammer out an agreement in principle with the new manager. It involved us talking to MRI talking to the new manager to MRI, back to Max and I, back and forth, then to MRI. And we thought we had crossed over the mountain, and we came to an agreement on salary, benefits, and other things that might be considered benefits and some other details. And then we discovered we were at the foot of another mountain, which we'll get into in a second. But at that point, MRI left the conversation. And I think you have all seen the results of that. You've all seen we sent out, but we didn't get into a discussion, we just sent out the substantive agreement that we hammered out. And so we are bound to that. That is the offer that we've extended to the manager, and the new manager has accepted that. So that's locked in place. But now it's a question of getting that agreement and putting it into the legalese, contract, employment agreement, and so forth that suits everybody's needs and satisfies the language in both our charters and policies and so forth. And that's really what we're working on right now, and that's why we didn't come to you with a finished contract right now. And I throw it open at this point and see if imagine if anyone has a question about this. About everyone good with where we are? And so one of the final detail that MRI is now taking care of is it was in their contract that they would carry out the background checks of the new manager. And I don't know how long that's going to take. And again, that is something that Dave Barra recommended, and I think Bill would recommend too, that we don't announce the candidate's name, that's we consider that part of the contract, that until that T is crossed, that we still don't have a completely perfect agreement. So, and I don't know how long that's going to take. That the background checks could take another week, could take 2 weeks. I don't know how long it's going to take. So that's where we are with MRI. And so now we are on to, if I can, we'll go on to the contract ratification. And Max, jump in if you want to. If you don't mind me, I'll just ramble on a little bit more. Sure. I handed out one of these. As I said, I met with Dave Barra this morning. He had a lot of questions, and if I could step back and summarize where we are, he basically said he and Bill can hammer out and make sure all of the language in the contract, in the employment agreement works, but he needs to know what exactly our intentions are. And the most important question he had actually was number 2, which is in terms of termination and severance. Is it our intention that if one board, let's say 6 months from now, 8 months from now, wherever, how many months into the contract we're into, if one board, or the majority of one board says, this is not working for us, we want out of this agreement, we want out of the contract, we don't want this person to be here, what happens? And I think we've talked about this already, but Dave thought it would be a good idea for us to talk about it again and really make sure he understands and we understand. What happens if, for example, the select board says, we don't like this, we don't want this person as manager anymore. The trustees say, we love this person, we want to keep this person as manager. What happens under that circumstance? If one party to the contract does not like it, does that mean the contract is now null and void, and that triggers the opt-out language and so forth in the contract? Or, because we've signed a contract, too bad. You've signed a 3-year contract, you're locked into it. And so, there's other aspects of evaluation and so forth, but we're locked into this contract and we can't break it. He needs to make sure that we know what, if we're faced with that circumstance, what the answer is going to be.
Can you remind us what the current MOU with Pat says?
The current MOU with Pat says that if either party can terminate the MOU with 90 days notice or something like that, but either party on its own. So if the trustees decided it wasn't working right now with Pat, we could say 90 days notice, boom, we're out of here, and the select board doesn't have a choice, and vice versa. But what Dave is saying is that Pat represented a slightly different situation than the situation we're getting into, and that was something we should have, I think we thought it through, but we probably, because we're doing this as novel, we didn't really understand it. Pat is a town employee who gets benefits from the town. The trustees hired him as a consultant for the village to be our manager. That's okay, but and that worked for us, but this is a different situation where we have a person who's coming in who is not an employee of either the village or the town. So it represents a slightly different situation. And so the MOU language maybe needs to be different. But if we want to keep the concept that we have, that either party can terminate the contract if they want to, that's fine. But we need to make that clear. We need to, everyone has to understand that that's what we want. Okay?
And that is a different question. I'm asking this as a question. That is a different question than one of the parties wants to cancel the MOU. So can one of the parties get out of the agreement that we have a unified manager? Is there language in the MOU for that now?
Yes.
So what is that language?
It's I don't know the exact, I don't have it in front of me, it's around somewhere, but it says with 90 days notice, one party can terminate the MOU. And if either party terminates the MOU, that would terminate the contract as well.
With the manager?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Andy?
So just to be clear, or to try to understand, there's two things that the select board can opt out of. They can opt out of the MOU that gives you services, but we can also fire Pat independent of your position at this point.
That's a good question.
So is that
I don't have it. I know what you're asking, and I don't have a.
Because those are two different things.
Yeah.
I think that was
That's what I was trying
what
to
you were
get
trying to get
to.
to is we can choose to opt out of the MOU. That's a lot less. I mean that's painful for you. It's less painful for us, but.
Mhm.
If we choose to fire Pat, that's real painful for you, because you may like him and you don't, yeah. I don't know why, but you might.
I think you could still keep the MOU the way it currently is now and still fire the town manager.
Yeah.
Because then you would replace the town manager theoretically with another town manager, and that agreement would still be in place.
Right, true.
The only thing that I think was really changed on the extension of the 3 years was the number of days that you had to notify the other party. And from a manager's standpoint, if I get an agreement with the town and the village says, here's my 90 days notice, then I have 90 days to start looking for another job if I want, or renegotiate my position with my current employer. If for some reason the benefits and the salary were greater because of the roles, then would be individually with one employer. That is assuming that the main employer, I mean, the town, was happy. If the village is unhappy to the degree that they're gonna exercise a 90-day provision, then the select board's gonna be unhappy equally, I'm sure, because it's, when a person doesn't work in a vacuum, I mean, it's only less than a half a mile between the buildings.
Right,
You know,
but
so it's-
I think that we have to understand that what Dave is saying is that he's doing due diligence to cover every potential, he's trying to do to the greatest extent possible, anticipate all the things that could go wrong. And what's the answer if one of these things happens? Not that we think this is gonna be very clear, not that we think, obviously, we're not gonna do this if we think it's gonna be a disaster. But this is the point he's asking, what happens? Dan, did you have a?
I had a question, Lori asked my question
Kind of
somewhat,
answered
but basically just the whole thing Pat brought up. I don't see why that individual, whoever is manager, can't renegotiate a contract.
Oh, absolutely.
With whatever
Yeah.
municipality.
No, that's not
Anyway,
what he's-
but the other thing is, what happens to us or
Yeah.
to them or whatever, those things, I don't know what you're.
No, that's not what the question before us is, it's really in a way, and I know it gets lost in the language, but it's really very simple. Absolutely, if the trustees decided we don't like it, so we could cancel the contract, then the select board could just renegotiate a new contract.
Mhm.
But the contract that we sign is a contract for a three-party contract.
Mhm.
And if the trustees decided we don't want this manager anymore, the select board wants the manager, then we're out of the trustees are out of the contract.
Correct.
The select board would not continue the
No, they're gonna have a
contract. They
new,
would have a
right, exactly.
renegotiation.
It's
We
gonna
have
be-
the option to renegotiate it.
Right, a new one,
That's fine.
whatever
So
terms.
it's like veto power.
Right, it's just to make sure that we understand that that's what we want. Or are we saying that, too bad, if it's a 3-year contract, and here's all the process that's laid out, and you sign it, and one board doesn't like it, and the other one does, then you're locked in.
I hear what you're saying, but the other thing is, Irene brought it up earlier in our meeting. Depending on who's sitting in these seats, she was saying something about with the elections, who knows what the design of the board will be in 2 or 3 years during the
I
contract. So
understand.
things could change. So Dave really can't, there's a certain amount he can't build into this to have an answer for every possible,
Sure.
scenario. And I think we just go with what, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but maybe it is. I think there's got to be territory that's been traveled before by other municipalities, other entities,
I'm not sure.
doing three-party contracts.
New ground.
Yeah, so,
I think there has to be an out, because we're stepping into an unknown, right? We did due diligence, but we don't really know until we know when the new manager starts and when we have a chance to see whether it works or not. So I
Right.
think to enter into that locked in for 3 years, that could potentially not be good for the community.
So you're saying either party could opt
Yeah.
out and then it's no?
I think that's just a simple question that Dave wanted to make sure we all know, that either party can say, well, look, for whatever reasons, whatever the language in the contract, there's no need to open that up. Just say, for whatever reasons, this is no longer working for us, then the contract is null and void. In other words, from the trustees' perspective, if the select board's not happy, then we're not happy, and vice versa. Okay? Is that the understanding? The goal here is to have a manager that both boards want. Okay, that's what I thought was correct, but Dave really wanted to make sure we understood that.
And I would hope that if that's starting to happen for whatever reason, that there's a requirement for us to try to talk.
Absolutely, absolutely. One other piece here, and this is a little less dramatic than that, but the village charter and policy says that the trustees shall negotiate with the manager about benefits and salary. It doesn't say the trustees shall negotiate with the Essex Town Select Board about the manager's salary. So Dave, the first draft of the contract that came through that was drawn up by Bill, it talked about the manager as a town employee, and the board that would be overseeing the new manager would be the town select board. And Dave felt that he can work this out with Bill, it's not a problem, but he just wants to alert us to the fact that there needs to be language in the charter that makes it clear that the manager is an employee of the village and the town, and is doing work for the village and the town, and is not so much a contractor that we're borrowing from the town.
In the charter or in the contract?
In the contract.
Okay.
Because he's a little concerned that there's a little bit of a misalignment between what the charter is saying and what the contract as it's drafted now. And again, he felt that it's perfectly fine for him Bill and Dave can work this out, but he wanted us to understand that.
Right, they're already trying to
Okay.
settle that through.
Yeah. The other questions that we had have to do with the existing MOU. And I think these are fairly obvious, but one of them, these were just things that Dave highlighted. Are we still calling this a trial period? We're not, or are we saying, are we committed? What do we want to say? Is this a trial period?
What is it that we're talking about?
The shared manager thing. There's language in the MOU that says, in order to try, this is a trial period to see if the shared manager works. Do we want to change that language?
Until governance is resolved, I don't think it's really a shared
Keep it in?
set thing, because the governance has to be, before you can really say we're shared, we still don't, the governance is gonna be resolved first.
Okay.
And the governance itself would be.
It's just yeah, Andy.
So with the three-way contract, is there still an MOU? Or is it
Well,
defined by the contract?
no, there's not it would now be called an employment agreement. So there'd be two things. There'd be a contract and an employment agreement, and they have matching.
So where
language.
would this trial language be?
In the employment agreement
Okay.
between the three parties.
Okay.
What we're calling an MOU is technically really an employment agreement. So that, again, that was a complexity because I was talking and Dave was saying, well, what do you mean an MOU? Where's the MOU? What are you talking about? And we were talking about the same document.
I think we should take it out, not to counter you, Dan, but I think it's not a trial anymore. I mean, I think we're doing it again. We're committed to, and that doesn't mean that neither party can back out
Right.
at some point. But, I mean, I think that we're signing a new document with a new manager, we're beyond the trial period.
So even if governance doesn't get the two boards
It doesn't mean
together,
this isn't gonna
we still
stay.
have a very functional
Right,
system now.
we've got a system, we've pretty much bought into it, and we just discussed, like, if one of us isn't happy, we end it, so.
If governance moves forward faster than the contract, or the renewed contract stays the same and renews, we're gonna have to change the contract language because it's not gonna be current with the existing governance. So that's what I'm just saying, that's where I see a conflict.
What does the select board think? What do you think? Are we still in a trial period, guys, or what are you thinking?
I don't think we are.
Okay.
I don't think we are either. I think we could get to a point where we've gone as far as we can go and continue on as we are with one employee. Yeah.
The reason I asked what was it is because I think that there needs to be some sort of a trial period with the new manager. But I think in terms of the arrangement, it's not a trial.
So like a probationary period
So
as an employee,
probationary
yeah,
period.
yeah.
Okay.
That's basically what the 3-year contract would be.
Dan, do you want to have a vote on this, or you?
No, I'm fine with that. I just voicing my, concerns or my, feelings on this. I support it. I mean, I don't have a problem with it being,
Okay.
solidified in the language there. That's fine.
Okay.
But just expressing that concern.
Okay. Okay, so we're beyond the trial period. The trial period got us to the point where we're now committing to doing this. Okay. Other language in the employment agreement, we need to say something that the village and town will co-employ the manager, and not that the village is going to appoint the current town manager. Okay, to go back to the charter piece. Is that okay with everybody? Understand? There was a question about the termination, but it's the same. I think we just discussed that and beat that one to death, and we're good. Other one that he noted was the current, there was a draft agreement that says the term would go from July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2021. That's obviously wrong. I just wanted to point out that we're starting in February and we're not. So that was going fiscal year to fiscal year. So I just want to point out that's going to be changed, if anyone has seen that.
Do we just need to have some sort of an addendum to cover the period,
Yeah.
February to July.
Yes. And then lastly, the question is, how do we want to proceed in terms of finishing up this paperwork with the contract and the employment agreement? Do you want to continue the arrangement we have now, where Max and I it's not really a negotiation, but work with the lawyers, with Bill and Dave, and probably staff to bring the thing home? Is that okay? Is that the best way to do it, or do you want to come up with some other arrangement? I can't think of one offhand, but if anyone can. But that we probably, you guys made the motion that we were going to work with MRI to come up with an agreement in principle. I'm thinking we're kind of beyond that now, and we're now into working out the fine details of the contract and finishing this up, so that probably wouldn't be covered under that motion. So it might be a good idea for you to make another motion, with all due respect, and authorize Max and I, if you so desire, unless you want some other folks to do it or you want some other arrangement.
I would feel comfortable with the two of you working with the lawyers to iron out the details of a contract, but I think that the actual signing of the final contract and review of a final contract should happen by each and every one of us.
Okay.
I agree with Andrew. I think as long as you keep us in the loop at points where our feedback could have a bearing on what next step you take, as long as you keep us in the loop, I think that's,
Okay.
I'm perfectly happy with the two of you bringing it home.
Yeah, we wouldn't sign it, we would just get it to the point where it's ready to come back
Right.
and say, here it
Right.
is.
Right.
Yep.
Are you okay?
I think it's gonna move a lot more quickly if
Yeah.
if the two of you work with the MRI and just make sure that you keep us in the loop.
Yeah. Well, we'd be working with the lawyer, with Dave and Bill.
Excuse me.
And the candidate,
Yeah,
and
Dave and Bill.
the candidates, and the candidate's lawyer.
Yep.
Yeah, I anticipate that's, but again, I don't know how long, because there might be some technical pieces that just take a long time, but we try to wrap this up.
How does the background checks fit in with,
That was part of the contract with MRI.
well, I know, but time-wise, how does,
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have a real date.
They don't know.
We're hoping within a couple
That's
of
what
weeks.
he's saying.
so I guess in the process, where do you have to pause if you have to wait because the background check hasn't?
That's a good point, Sue. We could finish up our piece by the end of this week, and then we're just waiting for the background check to get done. And I couldn't tell you how long that would be. I don't know what the holdup is. Dan, any thoughts about?
I just know that depends on, whatever background checks. I know for clearances in the government, such it can take weeks, months. When I had background checks, my background took months.
Yours took months?
Months.
Why don't we can check in with
This won't take
MRI,
months.
maybe get an outlook and keep the boards updated as
Yeah.
best we can.
Yeah. I'm assuming that MRI has been through this before and understands that we can't be waiting 6 months for a background check.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so the answer to the question is we don't have an answer.
I was more from a logistics perspective.
Gotcha.
You don't want to extend something and then find out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
There's a stop. There's a point where stop, get all the information right.
Yeah. And our good friends in the local media are just, chomping at the bit to find out who this is, so we have to try to be respectful of that.
So no
Okay.
motions.
I think, so, if we could have I would recommend that we have it's awkward for me to make this recommendation, but maybe might be a good idea if someone made a motion.
I'll make a motion. Here.
Okay.
Oh, thanks, there you go. I make a motion that do I just do us? Trustees
Yeah.
authorize their chair, I'm gonna start over. I make a motion that the trustees authorize our president to execute a contract with the new municipal manager once he is satisfied with the results of the background check.
I'll second.
Thanks, Elaine.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Is it really execute a contract or create a contract?
That's what I was gonna say, by
Right.
executing,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
signing,
okay,
right?
so
Yeah,
So. you want-
amend that to finalize?
For review, finalize for trustee review, manager's contract.
Okay.
For
Did you get
trustee
that?
ratification?
Thank you.
Mary
Does
Ann,
that
you
work?
want to read that back, just so we all know what it is?
That the Board of Trustees authorize the village president to finalize the manager's contract for Board of Trustee review once the background check is satisfied.
Okay.
Is that good?
I'm good.
That's essentially what was on here, but you replaced execute with finalized.
Exactly.
Is it finalized or is it drafted?
Well, we said for trustee review,
She said final.
for trustee, yeah. I mean, I don't think we can make
Okay.
changes to it, correct? That's not the intent.
No.
Right.
So you
So
don't
I,
want finalized, you're changing finalized? or you're
They want
finalized?
so
Yeah,
I'll
and-
second that.
Okay, second.
Amended
Then let me, then I,
resolution.
and you guys are gonna make the thing, but let's have a little pointed discussion here. So you gotta understand that, we need to be clear. If Max and I are gonna work with the lawyers and the new manager's lawyer and go back and forth and wrap it up, what we can't then do is say, okay, everyone's happy, the three parties are happy, now we're gonna go to the boards, and they're gonna get in and add their 2 cents and take it apart and add stuff. We can't do that, okay? If the boards wanna do that, that's a different process.
I think what we're saying is we want to see it
Yes,
before we ratify.
gotcha.
And the details
Before we execute.
have been, we have the details.
You have the details.
This is the legalese.
This is the legalese part, but nevertheless, you may not be happy with it.
That was gonna be what I was gonna say. How different is the contract gonna be from what you've already
Right.
seen in?
Right, it's
substance-
just to make sure it's consistent with the charters and.
In substance, it's
and
not
how
gonna be
we
different. In
terminate it.
substance, you've seen it, you've basically seen the substance of what we're doing
So
already.
everybody's had a chance to weigh in on substance.
Yeah. Okay, so trustees, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, great, thank you.
We have a motion from the select board to authorize the chair. I don't know what-
Same thing? You're gonna use the same motion?
Well, if that's what they'd like.
Okay.
I'll move that, substituting the word chair for president. And select board for trustees if it's in there.
Thank you, Irene. Do I have a second on that?
A second.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes 5-0.
Great.
Awesome.
I appreciate your patience through the rambling discussion here, guys, I appreciate it, thank you, it was good. I think it was important for us to get all these things aired out, though.
Okay, so that takes us through CN.
Yep.
Then, right?
Yep.
Okay, so then we're on to 5E, and that's what we added to say, let's pick at least one or two future dates for joint meetings.
Old school. You got the old.
Not in January.
Yeah, we already have a ton of meetings.
I know.
Yeah.
You're gonna be seeing blurs.
So we talking February then?
February, we could do
Okay.
one, right?
Don't we need to have our pre-meeting in January? No,
Not necessarily.
but then early February.
Let's see.
Well, our select board meeting's in February on the 5th and the 26th.
Right.
And we're the 6th and the 20th.
No, we're the 13th and the
13th and
27th.
27th.
Oh, 13.
So would the 19th or 20th work?
One school break, do people have that on the calendar?
Break is the 26th, the week of the 26th.
So February 20th?
So you want a Tuesday?
19th is the President's Day.
Okay, and how about the February
It's a
20th?
holiday.
Would that work?
How about the
Some.
13th?
The trustees have a meeting, I think. Is that around the 13th or something?
Second and fourth.
It's Mardi Gras.
No,
February 13th?
13th is our regular meeting,
And we can do what we're doing now and
27th,
What do we
have a joint
on-
meeting.
Yeah, 27th,
And
yep.
13th, 27th.
I can't add.
On t-
Yeah,
Yeah,
13th.
I thought that was what we were doing, looking for existing meetings to,
Oh, yeah. The select board typically doesn't, we try to have these joint meetings outside of our regular meetings.
got it.
Right, but we could.
But you
We have a
could.
lot on
Yeah,
our
we-
agenda on the 13th, do you know?
Don't know.
It's February.
It's February.
be
Plan
anything.
ahead, come on,
Plan
guys.
ahead, that's right.
Let's make it a joint meeting.
That will determine exactly.
It would be better for me,
What's better?
13th?
the third, I mean, I can do any of them, but the 13th.
Well, I'm only gonna say, I think the 13th, you're talking about having a pre-meeting to discuss, set up the meeting that's gonna be taking place within a few weeks, after in the 24th of March, so it seemed like you'd wanna have that as early as
Yeah.
possible.
That's what I was
So
thinking.
it's 13th earlier?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
let's
probably,
do
that should be good.
Yeah,
Everybody okay?
Yep.
Sue? Okay. Awesome. Do we dare try to find a second one, or?
What time? We
That
talking
one
7
was
o'clock?
relatively painless, Mr. Chair. I'd say let's go for it.
Okay.
7 o'clock on the 13th? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
why
Okay.
don't we propose that?
Yep.
That gives you a half hour again to do your thing. That's 7, okay. And we want to be on cadence of once a month, or
That wouldn't hurt.
particularly having
Well, you're gonna
the
have
manager
that,
on board?
Yeah.
It's probably really important to meet at least monthly. I mean, I don't think we want to do more than monthly.
So do we meet after the governance?
yeah, that's my question, is that you're gonna have a, big meeting already
Right,
in March, so.
that's our meeting in March.
Do we not want to meet shortly after the candidate would start, though, to discuss goals?
When does the candidate start?
The candidate,
End of February.
26th of February.
we're aiming for the 26th.
Okay, yes, probably. Point Andrew.
I'm kind of with Andrew on this. I don't think there's any voodoo about having a meeting before our meeting on the 24th.
Oh.
I mean, you're 10 days, you're 10 days prior to that. I don't think that would be the worst thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so,
So what's the recommendation?
yeah, I don't know, what specific day would that be?
Well, town meeting is March 5th.
Right.
13th,
March 13th?
13 again, just do it.
We actually already have a meeting on February 26th. Should we invite the trustees to the meeting on, the select board meeting on February 26th?
Kind of a quick turnaround for starting the meeting right then and there.
Right, that would be the
It's kind of
manager's
a
first day.
you know, seems like kind of a loss.
I would want to let them get their feet wet
Yeah,
first.
I think 13th.
That's just before town meeting. We're getting ready for town meeting that
But
night.
it's when the new manager is supposed to start, so.
Big welcome party.
It's the week before town meeting.
Welcome party off the week.
It might not be a bad idea, actually, to do it.
Nothing like starting off the first day and hearing from your bosses what they want you to do.
I'm not gonna be there.
I would suggest if we did that, we just keep it light for that meeting.
Correct.
We keep it real light.
Okay.
We wouldn't go into the goal setting at that point. I don't think.
Yeah, I think goal setting would be,
Nothing more than ceremonial, hi, we're all here.
yeah, I think,
Nice to see you again.
yeah, I'd lean towards that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking more from the perspective of having them included in a meeting where we're all there
Okay,
for the first, yeah.
sounds good.
26th?
26th?
Can I just ask, the very first day, they're gonna put in a 12-hour day?
Welcome to Essex.
This is what it's like.
Reality.
I just really, I think that's a little
agree.
much.
I agree with
I
Elaine.
Yeah,
think we should
I
give them
yeah.
2 weeks to get their feet wet and then have them come to a meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna, the candidate's gonna be
It's gonna have to be at that
at
meeting.
town meeting,
Well,
right?
if the candidate is going to start on the 26th, that means the candidate is officially the manager. And that person is gonna have to be, by charter, at your meeting. So he's gonna be, whoops, the person's gonna be there at your meeting that night.
So,
And this person's not gonna just arrive that day.
Let's hope.
They're gonna-
We don't know.
This person's gonna be here for a while before that, on directions to.
so I would vote only because of all the meetings we have to attend, that if we're gonna have a joint meeting, it's for a productive reason. And obviously, it's very productive to meet the town manager, and we can do that on our own time. I would prefer to have it in March and have a set agenda. Not bombard him the first day he's there, the person is there.
Okay, trustees,
Well, if this person's gonna be going to your meeting that night anyway, that, I didn't realize, I missed that part.
But what, so is it just a meet and greet, or are there gonna be?
Right, we could just all be in the audience and say,
We're gonna-
hey.
There's gonna be work to do.
Right, work for the select
For the
board.
select.
Yeah.
Right, so a joint meeting, I don't think is very effective that night.
yeah, it might be a lot to tack on if the select board is gonna, you've got regular select board business. I kinda see that.
If I may, I think the 13th works
March 13th?
better, only because you've got a meeting on the 24th that arguably is one of the more critical meetings that we're gonna have.
Right.
And I think the 26th is gonna be a little bit too much.
Chaotic.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the trustees can
They'll
attend the
have town
select board
meeting.
meeting and say
Right.
hi.
So last week
Town-
before
He'll
town
have
meeting.
town meeting under his belt.
Yeah.
I don't know, I vote for the 13th.
Matt, what do you think? No, go ahead, weigh in. We wanna hear what you say.
Speaking as a new manager, you're gonna be introduced to a lot of different people in a lot of different places, and you're gonna say, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm the new manager. And that's gonna be, you're gonna try to remember like crazy who other people you're meeting, including your staffs. So to have a little breathing room, I think would be very good. And during the course of those meetings, the individual may pick up some valuable information to share, so it could be a productive meeting from their point as well.
Can I just make one more comment? I'm sorry.
That's it.
So I love the idea, March 13th. I just want to throw out the question to the trustees. That will have been the third meeting in 3 months. That we don't have a full meeting. So are we neglecting any business that would need? Are we supposed to have Bill Ware come in and talk to us? I mean, there's things that I think are on our
It's a lot of
agenda.
stuff. I know. I know. I don't know.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, okay. Why don't we go with the 13th and, if necessary, we can make some changes as we get closer. If we feel that we're neglecting something comes up.
At our next, I know Sue, you were gonna go next, can I just piggyback on this real quick?
Okay.
Maybe at our next real trustee meeting, where we're just doing some trustee stuff.
Not that this one isn't real, this is a real
Right,
meeting.
yeah, that'd be great, to have an agenda, like a list of things we want to tackle. That's what I'd do.
Sue?
So my comment was around when we were first all discussing how we go through this process. One of the things that I threw out that I thought was probably one of the most important things that has to happen is a transition plan. And, we're talking about somebody starting on a day and then giving them a couple of weeks to kind of feel comfortable. Having started new positions, it's really important that somebody knows what's expected of them and have some sort of a plan for those early days. Otherwise, they're like, okay, I'm here.
No.
Now what? Yeah, exactly.
Just show
So I'm all for if everybody thinks it's too much, if we have a meeting and in the very beginning and it's, let's ease them in, but I do think there needs to be some sort of a very clear transition plan for whether it's the first 30 days, first 60 days, first 90 days, whatever, to make sure that they get what they need from Pat and from everybody else that they're gonna need to be working with.
Well, since we're gonna be meeting on the 13th jointly, why don't we put that as agenda item number 1
Which 13th?
of February? We're gonna meet we agreed to meet jointly on February the 13th.
Right, okay.
And so we could
And March
say,
13th.
because that's 2 weeks before the person would start.
Is that enough time to draw up a detailed transition plan?
I don't know. I don't know.
Pat, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the transition plan that you're speaking to is sitting out there in the audience, in the person of Greg. Greg has been at all the meetings. He's intimately familiar with the priorities of the administration right now. I can certainly weigh in, obviously. But again, speaking as somebody who's been a new manager, I think I always viewed it as guillotining the past with the entry of the new manager in some areas, and then listening to you, now Tim, as to the direction that you wish to do, and keeping that part of the past that you want to keep, and moving forward with the agenda. I don't know that I would be a value add personally, beyond, the generic things, and then also the interaction with the state managers group and VLCT or any of those other things, or Rotary, all those other things that you want someone to immerse themselves in to become part of the community at large. You're gonna be hiring somebody that is skilled in local government, so, the questions that they'll ask will be pointed and quick and easily understood, and probably have some great ideas for changes right off the bat, being fresh eyes and a fresh mind to this place. So transition might sound a lot like, oh, this is how we do it here, which is never a good thing to say.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking the how, I was
Oh,
thinking
okay.
the what. I think very
Yeah.
clear defining
Yeah.
what it is that
Well, we had talked about this briefly in the course of our discussions about contracts and everything, and I think that as soon as the new manager, we can't have 2 managers, and yet I thought it was I think it's a good idea if there's overlap for at least a week. And I would think that we would also want, and we definitely need, you guys would definitely need, my recommendation, this gentleman to be at your annual meeting. I don't think you want to throw the new manager right into the lion's den at your annual meeting. I think you're going to want this person to be there. So, but in order to have that happen, that's going to be a little tricky. And we
talked about that, the body would have to approve.
At the annual meeting, but then how do but we would have to work it out so that Pat continues basically being employed here for a week, for 5 days, while the new person is here. And so there's different ways of making that happen, but I don't know how it works.
I don't know if that.
Well, one way to do it is to start the individual earlier than the 26th.
Right.
But I think that's part of the discussions that you need to have and get a sense of what the new individual would feel most comfortable with doing. What we want and what they want should blend, and that's what you're going through this blending phase. And whether I'm employed or not, I'm not that far away, and if the manager wishes to talk to me about managerial stuff in general or anything, I'm certainly available to discuss that. If the individual arrives here early and needs me, to maybe parse out a day or 2 of activities and things, Sue, then that's certainly that's doable. But the end of the month is the end of the month.
Right.
So you're done on the 25th?
8th.
28th of February? Okay.
If this hire goes through.
Right.
But I also said that wasn't gonna leave you in the lurch either.
Right.
but
Larry?
What's standard practice in the industry? Do lots of town managers have such an overlap, or do most people vacate and let the new person start fresh?
most people vacate. I can speak from my personal experience, but also in the surrounding areas where they've had managers. The old guy is usually got a new job or heading south to Florida. New person comes in, and I think everything starts fresh, particularly with the relationship with the hiring authority. And department personnel are very adaptable and flexible, so.
But to go back to my point, though, I think that with respect, I would urge you to consider how you're gonna operate your town annual meeting, because your new person's not gonna have the answers. If someone asks a technical, institutional question. So, I'm not saying you have to explain it to me, it's not my problem, but I would just make that as an observation and a
You
recommendation.
have to do the same thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, but we've got slack.
We've got a month's time.
You guys, not so much.
I for one agree. I was hoping that there was going to be some kind of a procedure that we would be able to put in place to have the introduction at town meeting and then a deferral to Pat to present and to be available for questions.
Pat and I have had this discussion.
Right.
The body, since Pat won't be employed by the town at that point.
Or a resident.
Nor a resident.
Or a resident. But he could still be there if the body allows. And we could even consider putting an article out there that it says it once as opposed to, having to get permission each time he gets up to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that everybody is okay with it in the house. And if so, then, Pat would be able to, when things get down into the weeds, he could
Right.
Address those.
Yep.
And I was also thinking that at town meeting, where we stole this practice from the village about having the dinner, and if we have the dinner maybe even a little earlier, I think we've been doing 6:30? We do 6 even, and that could be a public meet and greet with the new manager. And then we'd go into,
That's a good idea.
At 7. And
Yep.
Pat will be there, and at the appropriate time, we'll embarrass Pat. And thank him for his services. So probably be a pretty good turnout there, but anyway, that's something for us to consider, putting an article out there that says, the board, or the body approves having
Yeah.
Pat speak to answer questions.
Whatever that legal step needs to be, I would.
Yeah, Pat and I have definitely had that
Be 100%
conversation. He's been very,
for
very
that.
gracious to say he's happy to do that. We just need to find a way to make that, make it work.
Yep.
Okay, so,
Did we decide on the 13th? of
did we
March?
decide on the 13th? Good? Everyone good on that?
So we have February
The 13th and the
13th.
13th.
And we start at 7 on the 13th, and we start at 7 on the 13th of March as well? Okay. So we need a motion for both boards, I think, right? Or do we know?
I don't think we need a
No,
motion.
no,
No, that's good, we just,
Consent?
now we're,
Okay.
yeah, that's good.
Awesome. All right.
Okay,
So-
I think does that wrap
There's
any?
no consent items?
Nope.
No executive session needed. Yeah, is there any other?
I'll move we adjourn the trustees.
Second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Ooh, the select board adjourns.
Second.
See, we're all in agreement.
There's the
Saying aye.
agreement coming.
Aye.
But we're adjourned, but don't leave without signing the resolution. I'll pass it down, I'll pass it to my left.
I don't know.
Usually are.